right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Critically Random, my podcast show where I screen direct. I'm not even completely sure what it's about anymore, and I'm here with a guest host for tonight, Bane.
Yes.
Let's not go there.
Okay.
So we'll see how far he lasts with me. This would now be technically the second guest host I've had on this show since C-Dub. I'm hoping to do another co-op with him sometime in the future. Probably another Star Wars related thing if we ever do that. But anyway, for now I got Bane here with me. Yeah, I somehow found a Batman Rogues Gallery villain.
I somehow crawled out of my cave, out of the darkness somewhere to do a show.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to expand my social universe a little bit. I'm not exactly that comfortable with just being a villain these days. So whatever, get out there a little bit, get my feet wet a little bit, maybe, I don't know, stick out on the surface a little more, expand my network. Living underground all the time's not really that fun anymore. I don't know. It's 2018. Try something different. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't care if Batman's out there, whatever. Just let him deal. That's his baggage. We had our problems in the past, whatever. I don't care if I run into him, in other words, at a social gathering or an event, whatever. That's his baggage. If he wants to be negative, it's not on me. I'm changing. I'm changing. I'm not the Bane of yesterday.
Got a new
exactly.
Yeah, Bane is a new man.
Villains have to be socially flexible these days. We have to adapt. So yeah, otherwise people are gonna forget about me. So I gotta be a villain of today, not yesterday. This isn't the 50s or whatever. It's not even the 90s. So yeah. So with that said, I'm not your grandma's Bane, I guess.
Yeah.
So maybe that could tie into one of the things that we were discussing casually earlier, or although with a flare of intensity, about some of the social issues, because technically just to play off and to tie it in with the whole Bane thing. So yeah, technically I'm an independent contractor as a villain in that whole dark underworld and that whole Batman world or whatever. but it does kind of sort of tie into employee rights. Remember, we were discussing that over dinner, employee rights and a little bit about how some employers have beginning to overstep their boundaries and maybe invade on some personal civil liberties and stuff. It might be a bit of a stretch, but somebody like a Bane, who happens to be a super villain, while technically, like I said, is an independent contractor, I might not always like to be associated and tied to a certain. They might not want to be necessarily confined, confined to a certain role only, and to have their rights limited and constricted. Although of course it's lighthearted, if you have somebody who's let's say a Bane or some type of other notorious villain who wants to go out and maybe have their own rights, their own civil liberties, and expand their universe a little bit, as someone might be invading on their freedoms a little bit by it's almost like being typecast. Except imagine being typecast at your job, and to the point where, like I said, your personal rights are being kind of confiscated. I'm not gonna say her name, but I'm close to somebody in particular that I feel that her rights are being kind of taken away at her job.
Violated.
Yeah, for example, you were talking about, what was that guy in the graphic novel? He created that graphic novel.
Yeah, Alan Moore.
Yeah. So Alan Moore, he was creating a graphic novel where he had this this fictional universe where you had like this place where there were cameras all over on the streets and everything.
Yeah. I think it might have been V for Vendetta.
Oh right, yeah.
And then the American government. I was talking to Bane about this earlier. That apparently the American government really liked that concept, so they actually took it and ran with it and integrated it into real life.
I mean, it could even go back. I mean, I'm sure that's not the beginning of it. That's probably the most popular and accessible example for today's generation, but it has to go back to at least, 1984, George Orwell, right?
Oh, yeah. Very famous novel.
And I guess if you read the book, you could argue that it happened... Some of the things he projected in there happened a little bit after that. Like maybe it was a little bit off. I wouldn't say that it's actually like 1984. A lot of it came to pass in this century more, and it's coming to pass more every day.
Mm.
But just another example of like just like extreme surveillance of like voyeurism. Voyeurism run amok in society.
And I saw a YouTube video the other day where more and more. They want to integrate like facial recognition technology.
Wow.
More and more, and it sounds really, really scary.
And you could come up with these justifications for anything, and for example, like I remember a couple years ago, I think it was when Bloomberg was doing this thing in New York where he was like preemptively like frisking like different people in certain sections of town that like were notoriously like statistically high in crime. Did you hear about this?
No.
A couple years ago, and of course it brought up a lot of controversy, and I definitely opposed it. There were like different people in different demographics, and they were just like doing like these randomly generated like frisks, like without any justification, without any just cause to prove that these people had done anything wrong, and their justification for that was just basically using statistics and just taking innocent people at random and subjecting them to like such an invasive thing like that. I personally find it like completely offensive, overly intrusive. I consider it a violation of basic personal freedoms, space. It's a civil liberty issue, and you could use any excuse you want to it because you could come up with an excuse for anything. I am totally against it, and it's quite alarming. And to allude back to that story I was talking about earlier, someone that I know, I'll just say that it's a family member. They work at an employer where now they're able to just have a camera. Now, I don't know how long this might have been going on in other people's jobs, in other places of employment, okay? So, forever, might be listening to this podcast or whatever, maybe this is nothing new for you. You might feel completely different, you might not care, but to me, I feel like it's both, the government and, like, employers and just the state in general overreaching its arm. She has a camera on her. She's working in a cubicle, and she has a camera. Like we're not talking about the cameras that like, and even that used to be a bigger issue. Like in the corner of the room or something like that, like overseeing everything that's going on. It took a while just to get adjusted to that for some people, depending on your line of work or whatever and your personality. But to have a camera placed individually in each cubicle, so basically someone could just see you and like every movement could probably, I don't know, identify like a speck on on your tooth. A piece of food probably. Just to give you like a humorous example, it's like something that shouldn't be. It's just way too invasive. No one should have that right. She told me there wasn't audios on the camera. There wasn't audio capability in the camera, but it's like, okay, well, it's bad. It's bad enough. It's still extremely invasive. And then she starts telling me about how she's worried about, if I do this or if I do that or even if she was even afraid to yawn on camera, that it was going to be suggestive of something like that she was being lazy or wasn't doing her job or something. So where's this going to go? If it's already that bad now, where's it going to go? Where, to what end, Like, what's the ultimate agenda here, right? I mean,
Yeah, I wonder that same thing myself too sometimes. A lot of things are happening faster now more than ever.
yeah.
And even going back to the whole the example I threw out there about facial recognition technology,
Right.
that's I hear it was mentioned on the news that there was a news clip I saw that was part of that one video. Where the whole facial recognition thing, it ties back to like Facebook. So more and more, like the government and employers, I guess, they're really keen on using that feature in Facebook in particular, where Facebook has that feature that it could facially recognize you. Now, thankfully, there is a component on there that does allow you to turn that feature off, which is good. But just just the whole the sheer fact that it's there, and it's gonna and then it seems that it's gonna be there even outside of Facebook. Like how it's being used right now in China. Like China has already started adapting this kind of feature into their security over there. So it's pretty scary. And then the people that were being interviewed over there, they didn't see it as a problem. They actually see it as being more safe and secure.
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, of course, it depends how it's going to be implemented, but it's just ironic, a service like Facebook, there was a time for a long period where I purposely kind of avoided sharing a lot of like social details relating to myself on Facebook, for the simple reason that there's a definite paranoia involved with like all the weird stuff that could go on, and but I mean, ultimately I decided to keep my account, and then in more recent times like post and share a little more information simply because, well, I'm just trying to connect with the people socially that I care to connect with. But it's just like, it's always in the back of my mind. There's this constant debate. It's like, okay,
like what could I say?
What could I say?
And what can I not really say?
And like, how do I have to shield my identity on there? And then I have to invite certain people in, and then should it only be for friends and not a public page? And then it's like,
yeah, I'm always I'm in a little bit of that loop myself. So this is why most of the things I share on Facebook now are they're practically all just like movie entertainment stuff, and hardly anything really personal or political. And I mean, I may allude to some of that stuff vaguely from time to time, but other than that.
Right, and then something ironic in my personal life, I used to have a lot of friends that would get kind of peeved with me, like that I wasn't like doing things on Facebook, like alluding to like maybe I was like being slightly antisocial or something. But it definitely, my intention definitely wasn't anything like that. My intention was just, having that endless curiosity of like, how is this going to come back to just potentially be harmful or invasive in some way. And then I mean, eventually though, more recently I did modify my behavior to where I'm like more social and stuff like that, but it's like, it's just so difficult to draw the parameters around where that begins or ends. And then even the way it's just ironic that this discussion I'm glad it came up though, that this discussion came up at this point in my life though, where I'm really at like the social crossroads and how I implement it with technology and but it's just like the way that it overlaps with other things. Like, for example, other people. There could be other people on that share, whether it's pictures or whatever else, of things, or just even if it's just information related to you, you might not even be aware of it. They're just people that happen to, to know you on there, and they might be sharing unwittingly aspects of your life that you might think you're not sharing, but they're sharing it, and it's on there, and it's affiliated with you. So essentially, it might happen anyway. Like a good example for me is I had another family member posting sensitive information relating to my family, relating to my parents on there, and it was another family member, and my philosophy was that shouldn't be on there, and their philosophy was that they wanted to share everything on there. And some of that information ended up affecting me because it was related to me, and some of the pictures that were on there were pictures that I didn't want to be shared on there that had my image in them, and they were shared anyway. And I couldn't change that person's mind. So where do my rights begin or end versus that other person also? I mean, if that other person has the image or owns the image, or if we're both in that image,
right?
Whose picture is it? You know, it's like it's so ambiguous.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of the things happening now in a socio-political way, I guess we could say, has become a lot more ambiguous. The lines are getting more and more blurry by the day. Even now, I'm even noticing Instagram has taken a kind of a larger presence. Maybe even more, maybe even a little bit more than Facebook, at least in terms of photos. It's funny. I actually like Instagram though. I kind of see it as a more, I guess, a platform for sharing photos in a social network that can be that actually is more. I think I find it more attractive. That's what it is. I find it more attractive, and even in some ways more useful than Facebook, because you could. It also gives you the option to hashtag things, kind of like in Twitter. So Instagram is taking a bigger presence. A bigger presence nowadays, and I don't know. I just feel like even some people are starting to get kind of tired out of Facebook in general, because I'm noticing like everyone is, not everyone, but a lot of people, they're sharing a high opinion of something, and usually more than not now it's political,
right?
If not technological. So Facebook, to me, I feel like nowadays has become a lot more rotten now more than ever. And if it's not like if it's not some sort of political debate or political storm that's happening with friends and acquaintances that you're friends with on the site, it's a popularity contest.
Yeah.
So this is why.
Well, that was why I avoided Facebook for as many years as I did. I mean, I actively, like, I never discussed this with you. It didn't come up, but I actively didn't have a Facebook account for several years during really the height of Facebook.
During the height.
And these are some of the reasons why that we've already went through here from A to Z.
Define what was the height?
I mean, I would say if I was going to pick, I don't know, I'm generalizing, but let's say from like maybe 2007 or 8 up until, I don't know, maybe 12 maybe. To me, that was like a really big Facebook period.
That was a big period, and I feel like in that period, I don't want to say Facebook was entirely innocent, or at least innocent or safe from all the political stuff and all the popularity notions going on. But I still do think, I look back at that time as it being more innocent, more user friendly than it is even now. Because now I feel like it's become so saturated with all the politically correct jargon and all these opinions, and some of these opinions colliding, and disagreements and debates, and where does it begin, where does it end, all of this, that I feel like it's become so bloated. It could, the bubble, I feel like it burst at any moment. It cannot self-contain itself anymore.
I agree. Yeah, it's just ironic because I'm thinking maybe I should just cancel my account again, and I was really only keeping it so that I could make more contacts and people that I want to be affiliated with for different reasons, not necessarily invest my whole life on there. But it felt like a necessity, because so many people that I would meet and then they'd be affiliated with. They would just be like, okay, well, find me on Facebook, or I'll connect with you on Facebook or whatever like that. And for years, I completely wasn't part of that world, and people kind of look at me like I had two heads,
And I could see why they would feel that way. The thought just came across to me that period that you mentioned, like 2007 or 2008 up till 2012. That was still the period where Facebook was actually just used for what its base purpose was it was supposed to be just a social network where you can connect to your friends. And if anything, if you think back and remember, what it actually started as was it was just started for college students to connect to each other.
Yeah.
And then later, it expanded to everyone else. And then everyone else treated it like its own college social network. And so for a while, that's why I said, like, when I look back at that time, it was like it was more innocent. It was more user friendly, and people were definitely they were cooler about it, nicer to each other about it.
Right.
And now it's just it evolved. It evolved into something,
or devolved,
or maybe that maybe it devolved.
Yeah.
Devolved into something else.
It kind of almost it's like what happened. This is not exactly the same, really, but it's like what happened to Craigslist. I remember. I don't know. I've used Craigslist for at least 10 years, and when I used to go on there, like, I know there were at least obviously you're taking a risk. You don't really know who you're connecting with, if you're trying to, buy or sell services or products or whatever, but it at least used to be that you could place a legitimate ad on there, you get a legitimate reply, but if you try to go in there now, it's just like, what's going on there?
There's so many scams running amok on that website.
And it feels like it's running like on it's just like this ghost state. Like it just feels like there's nobody's monitoring it. It just feels like it's just.
It really does feel that way sometimes.
So it's kind of like, although it's a different example, it's just kind of like it's another example of saturation. Like everything negative there has become so saturated that like it's hard to tell what end is up. Kind of like Facebook. It's almost like it's like people. Well, first of all, people who are on Facebook who have all these extreme views, who use it as this platform to just go on forever about whatever they want to go on about, they would never say most of this stuff in real life, face to face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like it promotes like this agenda or something of like this alter ego, like that they have, and it's like most of the people on there, it's like I had to create like a distinction with some of my relationships, like I mentioned to you earlier when we were engaging in this topic a little bit, and I said to you, I said there are certain people that I knew in my everyday life that I saw physically face to face, that I even said to them, I was like, if I read like the stuff you actually posted on Facebook, we probably wouldn't even be friends, because I don't even read what you post. And I'm like, it just goes to prove that like there's something weird going on. It's like some kind of disconnect.
It's a little bit of a disconnect. It's like people now, they really are living kind of a double life, and how they take their virtual life so seriously. It really becomes a part of their identity, and that's kind of how it's become for practically everyone who's on the internet now. The internet is now, it's like it's like your second life.
Yeah, and for a while, or in a lot of ways, I really don't engage in my second life in a lot of ways.
You're very different from most people.
I am, and to be honest with you, the presence that I have on there now, the limited presence that you see, is the most I've ever engaged. Some of that was because I literally was swamped with a bunch of mundane everyday things, but the other part of it was conscious. The other part of it was, is this really a good idea, and is it really worth all the baggage that comes along with it? Even if you put aside like sort of like a lot of the more extreme thoughts I might have about whatever, if you want to, into conspiracies and all this other stuff, and you want to talk about just like the voyeurism, and it could go on all day about that. But even aside from all that, even if you put all that in parentheses, what other baggage is it going to create in my relationships that I wouldn't have if my relationships were just more organic and simple?
And there's so many other things that we haven't even touched on.
No.
Besides the voyeurism and politics.
It's just the tip of the, proverbial iceberg here. I mean, you could go on all night about it. I mean, really, I could.
Yeah.
And ironically, all this stuff will go up on the net.
Yeah, and that's the irony to all of this.
That's the irony to all of it. But we both wanted to tell you that we're both available for face-to-face meetings and autograph sessions. Of course, I'm kidding about that part. But the point is, yeah, if we could...
Maybe I'm not. just putting it out there.
No, you are. You got to soften up to your fan base. Anyway... Well, hey, if you want a photograph of me, you know where to look. Just go online and type Bane. Pop up. That's easy.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but...
Oh, no, mine's the avatar that no one's actually seen yet.
Okay, well, whatever.
Back to what you were saying.
It's an online life. But the point is, this is organic as it's going to get. What you and I are talking about right now, this stuff that's online, this is the good part of online.
This is the good part of it. This is the good corner of the internet.
I mean, being able to share something real, to talk about real things in a real way that someone could actually really listen to, and okay, you might think I mean, of course, you could sit all day and catastrophize in your brain that you might be listening to someone that we have all these insane agendas, but there's a greater likelihood that we don't. That we're just
that we're actually just trying to share, constructive opinions and get a constructive conversation going.
Exactly. So,
so coming off of all of this, another thing that came to my mind was, as we're talking about Facebook and all this other stuff. So it's funny because it made me remember there's another social media network I used to frequent on quite a lot, actually, for about 2 years, and I really just stopped going on there. I got sick of it, but it was Tumblr, quite in fact. Tumblr. Have you ever been on there, Bane?
No, I haven't networked there.
You haven't really.
No, I mean,
been on too many of the social networks.
No, I purposely avoided that.
Okay, yeah. Well,
I was living a lot of underground then, so it's different. But yeah.
So I mean, I consider myself a fanboy to some extent. I mean, I don't want to say like I'm a raging fanboy where I'm so blind that I'll kind of just eat up anything and everything of a certain thing, but whatever. I have my fandoms.
I've never been called a fanboy, but I've been called a man-child. I don't know if that's worse or better or. And it ironically was by a child. Go figure. I don't know.
Go figure that.
That made me feel kind of embarrassed.
Well, anyway, so I'm I'm a fanboy who's grown, who's evolved, who I'm at my fan life has it's grown, it's changed over the years. So in my kind of at the peak of my fandom life, of my fandom days, at my very peak, when I was in my I want to say my mid-20s. By that point, I was in my mid-20s or on the verge of my mid-20s. So in that period, I was going on Tumblr. And I really used to like the site a lot because, I mean, for those who haven't seen Tumblr at all, it's an image-based site, but an image-based site for memes. So if you really don't know what a meme is, I would invite you to go on 4chan and basically just go on any of their threads except for B. I'll give fair warning. I wouldn't recommend that you go on the B board. Any of the other threads, so anime or whatever. And then there are some other adult threads on there that, I mean, that's up to you if you want to go on there. But you got to be 18 or older, as the site says.
Disclaimer.
As a disclaimer. Either that or you could also just Google memes, and there are a few meme websites out there. But basically, you'll find that a meme is just an image, a copyrighted image, from a piece of media, and usually it'll be a TV show or a movie or anime, and it'll have a text on it that will be kind of like an ironic joke in of itself. So memes, they actually originated, I think, from 4chan. I'm almost dead certain that they originated from 4chan. And then Tumblr, it became a meme focused site that would happen to be a social network. So this was interesting because another thing about Tumblr that was kind of weird and unique too was that it also considered itself a blogging platform. But it was a blogging platform that people were using mostly just to reblog memes. So a lot of these memes, they were originally from 4chan that would just carry over to Tumblr. So in my heyday of fandom, when I had more time on my hands and less adult responsibilities, I was just on this site a lot. And believe it or not, I was even meeting and talking to random people from different parts of the world that I would just message just because they were into the same fandoms I was through Tumblr. And, and I just, I loved every second of it. I was so enthralled by all of it. Because
that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it?
It's not. It's not. So I mean, that's always something that's always gonna hold like a special place in my heart and in my memories.
Would you say was one of the more positive aspects of being out there and doing those kinds of things on the internet, or?
Yeah, it definitely was. It definitely was.
Or does it come with a measure of something that you should be wary about, or?
No, I mean, in a lot of ways, I enjoyed those experiences far more than even Facebook. And the only other thing that I could think of that even remotely compared before I was on Tumblr, of my experiences on the internet that could even remotely compare to was when I was going on forums, and I used to go on a bunch of anime forums, and even that got kind of that got stale on me after a few years. So Tumblr was obviously just an animal of its own, and it was just a wild experience of its own for me. But getting to the point, the sad part though is that after those 2 years or so that I was on Tumblr, at some point I really just I got sick of it. I grew out of it because the demographics of the people that were flooding there were people that I generally didn't really want to associate with, because there was a lot more of a SJW agenda that was starting to erupt in Tumblr. And so sadly, I parted ways because, kind of like Facebook, that site had also become into something that I considered more rotten and something I didn't really want to partake in.
And just for the record, I met you in person, so I'm going about my business in Gotham at some point. I think I met you there, so I'm innocent. Well, I don't know what that makes me in this whole colluded mess that we call the internet, but just for the record, I find it interesting that some of the best connections, I think even in your personal life that you met, were just by old-fashioned encounters in person. Well, didn't you meet another friend of yours in person? There was a friend, like some of your friends were from the college you attended, right?
Yeah.
And it's
sure.
Yeah, and it's ironic that you might end up interacting with a lot of those people later, on the internet, and you might also be in a lot of similar communities on the internet, but the ironic part is, I mean, most of the best people that I've still met, that I still interact with today, were just from traditional face-to-face meetings for one way or another.
Yeah. And that holds resonance with me too. Yeah, all my best relationships in my life are still people who I met face-to-face. And it doesn't mean that that's the only way to do things. But at least it's kind of like, it presents it like, okay, it has a measure of reality
to it to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could at least, I mean, if I meet someone, and I have, of course, met some pretty interesting people online, some of which I met later in person, some I haven't, but
Right.
there's always that, you know, ambiguous, unknown part of it on maybe both ends of like, okay, you know, is this, I don't know, you know that like that, and there's, what is that term, catfish?
Yeah. There was a documentary from a couple of years ago.
I even had like some people that threw that out there, and long ago in my past asked, that I would interact with on there, saying like they were worried about that I was catfishing them, and I was just like,
Really?
yeah, and I was just like, they were just generalizing, you know, and just expressing that concern. I was just like, well, and you know, unless I meet you, I don't know how I can prove otherwise. You're not going to believe anything I do. I mean, I could just post some image from God knows where and say it's me, and I can't necessarily be proven or disproven, you know, unless I meet you somewhere. Ironically, too, some of these same people, and this is kind of stretching it out a little bit, but just for humor's sake, ironically, some of the same people that would say that then made it really complicated to meet in person when I tried to meet them in person to hang out, and it just never happened. So this just like stale cycle would just keep going around and around and around, and it's just like, there's no solution. It's kind of like, it kind of like ties into like some of the other problems here with the double life that you could lead on the internet. It's like some of it just perpetuates itself, and then like, where does it ever end? Because if you begin a problem on the internet and you try to solve it on the internet, sometimes it's impossible to do.
Yeah.
It's just like a dog chasing its tail kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah. The internet is an endless equation, in other words.
and I'm old enough to remember. I mean, I'm by no means ancient, although Bane's getting older now. But, or at least the various incarnations of him, whichever one you want to pick. You know, the most popular one now is getting kind of old. But point being is that, you know, I'm old enough. I'll put it that way. Although, you know, it's fair to say I'm not old. That. I mean, I'm older than you are, as you know, and I grew up in the generation that was kind of like, I've still been looking for the perfect word to describe it. I don't know if it's hybrid generation or if it's crossover generation, maybe crossover, where the earlier part of my childhood and the earlier part of my adolescence was like pre-internet explosion, you know? Whereas later on, the later years, as I was started to, like, I remember the last year I had in high school, maybe the last year and a half, 2 years, that was when the internet started to become more, you know, and I'm going back now to like dial-up, you know, it was like my last couple years in high school, it was like dial-up internet, you know, and that became like more common, that everybody had it in their house and people were like surfing the net every night. But before that, I mean, I got a taste, you know, I know what it was like on the other side. You know, a lot of people don't, obviously, who are like, you know, like, let's say, like, maybe 30 or younger. They don't know what it was like, maybe, or they don't remember because they were too young, understandably. But I remember, you know, because I remember what it was like before that, before I was about 16, 17 years old. And so my point in all that is that it gives me a unique perspective to kind of get a taste of what it was like before the internet explosion, and then to see what it was like, obviously, more years after that, but to see what it was like after that, and then just kind of compare the two. And so there's a part of me in both. I guess there's a part of me in both worlds, even though I never fully embraced everything online as much as like a lot of my cohorts have. But anyway, that's neither here or there. So, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting perspective. I feel like I'm kind of in the middle of both generations.
I feel like that way sometimes too. Funny enough, I actually also remember internet the way it was in the dial-up days. So,
but I mean, dial-up, I didn't even, like I said, my first experience was with a service called Prodigy, which you may or may not have ever heard of if you ever researched it. I don't know.
No, I didn't use that.
Okay. Well, you know, America Online was the first major, right? You know that, right?
Yeah.
AOL? Okay, so this was pre-AOL. And this was when, like, only, like, really, like, you know, computer savvy or, like, really techie people who like computer back in, like, you know, early maybe mid-90s a little bit.
Yeah.
A little early 90s. Well, they would be able to get on these various servers, and I think there might have been even a couple more even earlier. But remember, the first one I was ever on, my friend had a computer. He was really into that stuff. This of course was before a computer became extremely common as a household thing. Most people who had computers only had them to just go on and just basically keep electronic files of things. It wasn't really an online thing, and Prodigy, he would go on and when I would basically go over and see him, we would go on these different servers, and they were just basically like the first forms of like primitive chat rooms. And that was like right before the whole chat room explosion would happen. I remember that, and like chat rooms were like everything online back then in the night, like late 90s. And yeah, sure enough. I remember I was so enamored with it the first couple times I used it. I'd be over at my friend's house, and I'd crash over there, and he'd go to sleep, and I'd be up on his server for like till like 4 or 5 in the morning, just talking to people till like 4 or 5 in the morning, and little did I know that it was going to become like the thing. Like I just thought it was like just like some obscure side hobby that like was going to be in some like niche, some dark corner or something, some niche of like basically, to be honest, for people who were just considered like, it was like the same way now that people who don't use computers are considered outcasts from societies, more or less. At that time, if you were that much into computers, you were kind of considered sort of like a niche outcast. At the time, I mean that's where we were at back in, like, this was like maybe 1995. It was like a very much like you were considered like part of this like nerd or whatever community, and it was like a niche thing.
Yeah.
I had no personal view on it. I could care less. I mean, I was just my own person.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was the broad consensus back then, I remember.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, and now it's just so funny how the tables have turned.
Yeah.
You're basically considered like, I mean, let's face it, like, even if you're not like some serial killer hillbilly who's like out in the woods somewhere like chopping people up, if you're not using a computer, like, wow, what's wrong with that guy? Even though you may have perfectly intelligent reasons of not wanting to engage in a certain medium, or maybe you just live a simple life, or maybe you're extremely paranoid. But anyway, it just amazes me how much the tables have turned, and that was only 23 years ago. And I say only, I know I'm like dating myself a little bit, but that's not a long period of time for it to become.
Yeah, it's such a long period of time. Yeah.
And really, you could really say it took less than that. I mean, probably only 10. Yeah, even just 10 years after that. If you go from 95 to 2005, and how diametrically opposite, even just 10 years ago was like just a completely different world. So.
Yeah, even 10 years ago, the internet was a different kind of landscape.
And now you're required. It's not an option like it used to be. You're required to do quite a bit of things online, even if you don't want to. You have no choice.
You have no choice. Yeah, jobs they make you do they make you do these training courses that are online. You have to go on websites, like, it's just crazy now, like how.
And speaking like you were earlier at Facebook, it's like you have to create a pseudo identity. You can't have your real identity on there, and if you're afraid of your employer looking up and making a judgment on you based on whatever you have posted on Facebook, for example. Yeah. I mean, that's been rampant the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's become more rampant, I feel like, on things like YouTube now. Yeah. Like, people on YouTube, they're most of them, they're trying to separate, like, what is considered their everyday life identity to creating an identity online.
Yeah, and how could that be accomplished?
I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, yeah, I could see what you mean. It is kind of a tricky balancing act, but I mean, people, they do it. People who work day jobs who also happen to be YouTubers, some of them, they figure out ways of integrating the two of them, and then they become accepted for both. Others not so much. Others, for whatever reason, based on a job they have, or maybe it's just family members, they are literally creating this kind of personality that they want for themselves, for themselves on the internet.
Yeah, you could definitely. Yeah. It definitely can.
And Instagram too. It's not just YouTube. This has also been happening on Instagram too, I notice.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna cancel all my accounts in 5 minutes, the next 5 or 10 minutes. And that's it. It just disappear, and you'll never see me again after this podcast. You'll never hear from me. I'll be back underground, where it's, at least all my dangers are readily present.
One thing you mentioned, I was kind of wondering when we were talking about when we mentioned online friends. So, in what ways have online friends impacted you at all?
Wow. Well, some online friends that I have made. Geez, I even traveled different parts of the country just to see them. Some of them.
Me too, actually.
And we didn't get. You don't know this yet, but you will now. That true story. That one of them, and I know I'm not unlike some other people out there. One of them, years ago, before being with the person I'm currently with, and she doesn't need to hear this, although it's not a secret, because she might get a little bit jealous or whatever telling the story, although she's more mature than that. Whatever. And you know how it is, relationships, you got to be cautious or else your woman will beat you up. I'm kidding, of course, not really. I went all the way across the country to meet someone, and the long short of it is that, I would say we came pretty close to... we discussed getting married and everything else. Once I met that person and I realized, wow, they're the real thing, and I really fell in love with that person for a while, and it didn't work out for different reasons, It didn't work out. That person is now deceased. But that's a whole other story. That's not the point. That's not why it ended. Ironically, it did end based off of some untruth, which you will say was perpetuated by the internet identity. Although there were a lot of things about this person that I cherish and loved, and they were a great person overall, there were some untruths that were perpetuated by they were able to hide behind that internet identity. And then when I actually met them,
oh wow,
let's just say that although we did get over and eventually remain friends later until they died, it basically was the undoing of the relationship, and it was someone basically that, I cared so much for. I could have definitely seen myself marrying had it not been for this one very inconvenient elephant in the room type of lie that was, perpetuated by hiding behind, a screen name. And that was back. I'm going back a ways. That was back during the chat room, AOL chat room heyday, where that was a place to be. Before that turned into I don't know what Craigslist is now, or whatever. It's just a saturated mess of just I don't know. It just became an illusion afterwards. But this was back when you could still actually go in there, have a fairly good time mingling with people, and you might find someone you liked, and you might end up calling them, and you might end up meeting them or whatever. But that was back when the objective was to actually meet somebody on there that you could actually call. And now it's the opposite. Now nobody wants to hardly call anybody. Now it's I'll call you and then we'll connect on Facebook, and it's almost or wherever social online, it's everything leads back to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost, and some people never talk on the phone at all, which I don't know, take it or leave it. You make whatever you want of it, but I just find that ironic. The objective used to be to get to the phone, and then the objective from the phone, if you like somebody, would be okay, well, let's meet up. And now it seems to be, and now sometimes it works in reverse. Now it's almost if we meet in person, maybe we'll discuss it on the phone, and if we're on the phone, maybe we'll discuss going online. You know what I mean? It's kind of it somehow went in reverse or something, in a vacuum or something, I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you've ever thought about it that way, but there's some truth to it. I've lived it, so I'm speaking from experience, so. And then, like I said, there's another person on there that accused me, and this was this girl that she thought I was, she was worried that I was doing this catfish thing with her, And then when I tried to disprove that by actually meeting her in person, she came up with every reason under the sun why she couldn't meet me. She needed it. I said, well, of course I said, well, I know you never met me. We can meet in this public place or that public place or the mall or wherever.
And what kind of website was this that you were connecting
That was just
on?
out of just another basic chat room years ago.
Chat room?
Yeah, it was like, that one I think was like 2006, 2007. And that was like right near the end of like when right before that stuff kind of got phased out.
I feel like I missed out on the whole chat room thing. Like I tried it a little bit, but I never went to the right places. I tried it like on a site like Gaia Online, and that for me that was horrible.
Well, when I was like actively engaging in all this stuff a lot, my
chat room ended up being more forums and Tumblr. That was where I was talking to random people and even messaging random people, and then like
I was doing a lot of this stuff between the ages of like 15 and like most of between the ages of 15 and like 23, 24. And so for you that would be like, well, subtract about a decade. That's why.
Yeah, so I was because we're about a decade apart.
All that stuff that you got into later, I was already kind of over a lot of the stuff, so I wasn't as impressed, even though it was new, even though like the internet had greatly expanded and it was diversifying.
Right.
It was like the internet wasn't anything new to me, even though it was a lot bigger.
Like you already kind of went through your phase.
Kind of went through my phase.
You just did it in a different way.
I did it in a different way, so it wasn't like, a new toy to me or whatever.
Like a new thing,
all right, whatever.
Like
it's
not
kind
as
of like,
not as shiny anymore.
It wasn't shiny. Yeah, it wasn't really shiny. It was just like, okay, all this stuff just keeps on like multiplying and diversifying, and sort of these atoms or whatever keep splitting, or so to speak. But it's still like the same thing.
And I even had a little bit of a phase too. This was actually already around the same time I was on Tumblr, but it still kept pedaling on even after I left Tumblr. As I was frequenting on fan fiction websites too, so that was another thing with me. I don't really go on them that much anymore, but yeah, that was as I was getting into writing more and more, I was getting more and more curious, like what other people like me are posting online.
I considered like a few different times, and I never actually did it, but I considered writing like some fan fiction on a few different things, a few different video games, a few different whatever. And I came up with a lot of what I thought was interesting stuff and would have been a lot of fun to share. And then that actually led to a broader discussion with some people, some online, some in person, some on the phone, imagine that. But it actually got to the point where, we were discussing the broader idea of like, of sharing creative work, sharing artwork or whatever, over like any type of creative work over like a medium like the internet and what it means. And most of the people I discussed it with didn't give it a second thought. And I said, well, I'm like, do you really want to sell yourself short as an artist? This was my perspective. Do you really want to sell yourself short as an artist? Because why just like, it's nice to, I'm like, why just give if it's nice to share, but why just give all your stuff away? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, some of these people told me that they legitimately wanted to try and like take the hard road of like trying to make it as an artist, like as their main source of living. And I was like, well, there's no way you're going to be able to do that if you share everything you do online. You can advertise and self-promote online, but if you just like, let's say for example, if you're a writer and you're giving away all your content online, then what do you have to sell? Like, it's it's like, don't. If you can make money from doing it, and your objective is to not just do it as a recreation, and you actually want to make a living doing something like a creative medium like that, like writing in particular, if you give it all away in there, no one's gonna buy what you have. Everyone's just gonna expect you to just keep giving it away.
And I feel like this is kind of like a ripple effect from like DeviantArt in particular, where so many people were posting a lot of good artwork back in the earlier days of DeviantArt. But again, with all the saturation of that website, it's like, how does an artist even begin to make money anymore if they're just sharing everything for free online?
That's what I mean. And I mean, listen, I don't pretend to be like Ludwig von Beethoven or anything, but like even just the songs that I was telling you about that I've been working on, like I've had to purposely avoid putting them online for like similar reasons, or worried about like copyright infringement and things like that. And just and you don't have to have like a number one hit or whatever, you know, or you know, be an immortal artist or whatever you want to say. Just, you know, to say that somebody won't copy you. Anybody can take your idea, and then it's just, that's another problem. It's like even if someone else doesn't treasure my work, I treasure it because I created it. And most people who love their art, they take it seriously enough to like listen. You know, they love it. It's their creation. It's their thing. If they have one fan or if they have 1 million fans, whatever. It's they're entitled to. You know, that's their work. So if anyone could, I don't want anyone. You have to be very careful. No one seems to be careful about copyright these days that I talk to.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
yeah.
It's still important because then someone could just take it and just act like it's, if you just post it online like carelessly, they could act like it's just like communal. Oh, whatever,
Yeah.
I thought of this, and oh, whatever, it's there for everybody to take a piece of it. And I don't know about you, but no thanks. No thanks. I don't share everything that way, and I want, you know, that's still my intellectual property. So I'd love to go on and be more social with some of the stuff, like some of the songs I've written and some stories and stuff like that. But until I get that stuff, until I get a copyright pending on that stuff, it's gonna stay in the vault for the most part, you know? And it's a shame that I have to think that way, but just because...
But you're thinking more maturely than most other people.
I know, but at the same time, ironically, that maturity in some ways has socially isolated me.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
I'm too mature to be social.
You're too mature to be.
That's what the world's telling me.
And you know, I'm getting to a point in my life. So I don't know if we should clarify our age ranges on here. Should we or should we not?
Age range is fine.
So I'm in my late 20s
right
now as of the time of this recording.
And I never said this out loud, so this is the first time, so bear with me, but I'm in my late 30s. Oh my god, I said it.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm over it.
Yeah, so I've gotten to this point in my life now that I'm really starting to kind of be a lot more thoughtful, careful about like all my actions online, you know, whatever the heck it might be. And you know, if I want to post, I'm probably if I have like if I'm finishing a script, you know, I don't want to post that thing online. I mean,
no, you shouldn't.
Yeah, like the only way I'm using online for when I'm writing something is I actually am using a website to write a script, but that's a little different. There's a program that I downloaded. Oh,
it helps that you write the script, or like formatting?
It's I'm using Celtics, so it's different. It's not like publicly whatever I write on there, it can't be seen by others.
I mean, for the record, I've never tried to write a script, but I know eventually it's going to happen. Eventually I'm going to want to write a script for like screenwriting or something. Mm-hmm. It's not anything I've forayed into yet with writing, but I know it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
And
so you could use Celtics as a starting program. It's a good program, and it's not a social-based network, so far as I know. I don't know if they're changing that, but the regular feature to it is that it's supposed to be creating your own personal account, and you keep your stories private. So I use that, and then obviously I'm not going to share it out in the public, whatever I'm writing, my original stories. And then fan fiction, that's different though, because I'm already writing about copyrighted material, and I don't intend to make money off of it anyway. So that's different with fan fiction. But yeah, if I'm writing a movie, or if I'm making a purely original concept art, you know, I'm gonna think twice before I put it out there online. I'm gonna want to get it copyrighted or trademarked somehow, because like he was saying, you know, a lot of people, they're still, you know, well, it's mostly people that are younger than us that are just kind of doing it without thinking about it.
People like that have grown up fully immersed in it. They like,
yeah,
you know, all they know is just
to just do that. Yeah,
That's it. They're just conditioned from day one.
They're conditioned to it.
I mean, if you're 3 years old and you've already like mastered using an iPad, why would you ever think of anything differently? You would just think that that's an extra appendage to you. That's another. That's just. It's just part of you.
I'm so glad that we've hit this level of this kind of discussion, because I feel like with this mode of thinking, it's actually changing all it's changing all of our media, the way people are making it, the way we see it virtually all together. You know, like traditional media and even new media. So like movies, Hollywood movies, and TV, and then things like Netflix. I mean, they're all like affecting each other because they've all been affected and are affecting each other. Each of these mediums are affecting each other and are being affected because of these behaviors on being exhibited on the internet.
I know, and it's not going to stop, or it's just going to get more intense.
Yeah, it's only
it's just one giant melting pot, really, of mediums or communication, and it's just all going to become just one. I don't know. It's just all going to become like one giant thing.
Yeah, I don't know either, but yeah, and this will have to be saved for probably another podcast episode. But I've noticed like a lot of movies and TV shows and Netflix shows, they all like want to be cinematic universes.
Yeah.
Of some sort.
It's all about branding, name recognition,
And even art, even like traditional art, is becoming more and more digitized by the day. Like, even things like paintings and stuff. Paintings and then photographs. You have all these websites and all these digital platforms where new artists are showcasing. That's what they're doing. They're showcasing their stuff, or even trying to sell it through an online platform. Yeah,
well, hey, I mean, there are some people that might be listening to what you're saying right now, and they might go, so? What do you have to say to them?
To those kind of people?
Do you consider that a problem?
Well, I think... Okay, well, I think I probably would tell those people that may be listening to this is... I would say to them... I don't think that what you're doing is wrong, because art is subjective, and even technology, it seems to be becoming more and more subjective. So I'm not saying that it's what you're doing is bad, but I'm saying keep in mind that right now I think we are in this kind of a very sensitive transitional period in the world right now, in history as a whole.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that.
That you're on a slippery slope is basically what I would tell them.
Yeah,
you're on a slippery slope. So what you're doing is not bad, but it's not. It's gonna help you in some ways.
Right.
You might get more press and advertisement and everything, but in a lot of ways it's also gonna hurt you. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, now that we've warmed up, let's get into it. Oh, I was hoping you would know that's a joke.
Oh.
Sorry, you can't see this, but I like complete look of confusion and shock on his face.
I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
Yeah, I'm ready now. Now that I just thought we were just breaking in there, warmed up. I'm pretty much, I'm ready to go now. If you want to begin now, I'm all ready. Oh wait, this is the end. All right. It seems like this is the end. Maybe I was confused. I thought this is just a pre-segment. But
yeah.
I said. All right. Well, now that I've completely like confused and shocked this podcast counterpart here, maybe that's the best note to close on.
I'm still good. I mean, I'm not. I didn't feel that was the conclusion.
Okay,
because
I could end it there, or I could go on for 2, 3, 7 hours about it. I mean, it's an almost endless topic.
Yeah, well, maybe we want to start winding it down a bit. I could probably agree to that.
Okay.
But I guess other sporadic thoughts I still have on all this subject matter. Well, just to throw out there, a lot of my online activity nowadays is I'm on YouTube like all the time now. I'm finding YouTube channels like all the time, new ones. I tend to follow people who do video essays and some vloggers too. So I'm still getting my own actual video-based YouTube channel together, which I intend to be video essays. So keep on the lookout for that. That will be coming in the future.
When I make these like when I write more of these songs that I told you about, and I start to go out there and try to set up gigs and stuff like that, what I'm gonna use like places like Facebook for is just for like a marketing tool, self promotion.
And that's a pretty good way to use it, I think.
Yeah, and when I mean, this is kind of crazy, but I definitely have to share this because it seems to be like it expresses a lot of the ironies of online life, and it's just something that I think would be too important to leave out of this. Originally when I signed back onto Facebook, because I wasn't on Facebook, as I said, for a number of years, when I got back onto Facebook, it was only because a friend kept trying to cajole and push me into getting back on, just because he wanted to, he just wanted to share things with me on that medium that he just couldn't share with just sitting across from me talking and stuff. And, and I was hesitant for a while. He actually had to push me and persuade me for a couple of years, no joke. For a couple of years. And then, ironically, and on a personal note, and it's okay because no names need to be mentioned to express this point, I wanted to go on and see if and this just ties in, this is just funny because it goes directly into the heart of all this stuff about the information that's out there and the voyeurism and all this other stuff. This is such an ironic, perfect example of it. I went on there to try and get information about my father. Okay, so basically I had a father and a stepfather. This was my father, and I wanted to get information on my father because he was like estranged from the family for so many years, and nobody really knew hardly anything about him anymore. And he was basically in the process of dying, and the only way that I could get any information about this person, like a picture or anything else, was through an online source, ironically. My own flesh and blood.
Wow.
Someone who I had not seen, at least, I don't know, let's say about 30 years. And someone who had lived a largely clandestine, very peculiar life in the sense of that, like, he interacted as almost, really about as little as almost any definition you could describe as a loner. He really didn't know hardly anybody anymore. And he was kind of really just living out of really a really small home and almost out of one room and near the end of his life. No one even knew where he was. And then I go on, and of all things, do something connected with Facebook, someone else's. This ties into something else we said earlier. It wasn't that he created his own profile. Someone else's profile, and ended up getting a picture of him on there. And so that's how I saw a picture of my father in old age. Otherwise, I never would even know what he looked like.
Wow.
At that. So how's that for irony? And how's that for the power that the internet holds?
Yeah.
I couldn't even... I just don't... I don't know where to begin or end with that.
Crazy.
And that's... I wish you could see his face because he's probably thinking, like, really, are you serious? It's all true. And this is something that we didn't, just to share with anybody who might be listening. This is something that we didn't have there was no chance to discuss any of the stuff. It just kind of came up. It's all true, although maybe entertaining to you. It's not. It's true, folks. I know it's on the internet, but it's true. And Also, not to mention any names because that's not necessary, but the person over there that's in the other room that happens to live in this place, this mysterious chamber we're running our little show out of.
Right.
She's never had a Facebook profile ever.
Really?
And, geez, I practically had to pull teeth to get her to create an email account. And that took years, you know? She didn't even have an email account until, oh my god, I think at least like 2008 or 9. Like, that's
pretty late in the game.
I know. And then I had to, like, you know, teach her some fundamentals and some basics. I had to use certain things. She just didn't care. She just didn't care. And in a way, it was frustrating. And in another way, I admired it. Like,
I can see why the two of you go in that way.
I mean, she was like far more extreme than I ever was, though. But I mean, you know, and she still doesn't have any type of anything like Facebook or any other similar social media account. She's probably gonna never get one. She did express to me that whatever I post on my Facebook account, she does not want herself to be in those pictures. She doesn't want the image, and for some of the controversial things we discussed, she doesn't want the image floating around God knows where. She's just not comfortable with that. And she sees no reason to do it. She can't think of any benefit she would gauge from it. Of course, we don't have exactly the same point of view, but I respect her point of view.
Right,
you know?
Yeah.
So, how's that for a real life account? Can't write that stuff.
I cannot top that online related story for the life of me. Or at least at this moment, from the top of my head, I can't. Yeah, a lot of my interpersonal friendships I made through online have really just so far they've extended to I think just anime conventions, like friends who I met online first and then met in real life a little bit later. It was all just centered around the anime community or anime fandom.
Yeah.
You know, which is good. You know, nothing wrong there.
I used to play a lot of internet. Well, that's what the internet's good for, though. I mean, if it's done in a healthy way where you're, like, that's what I like about the internet. You're connecting with people of similar interests.
Yeah.
You're expanding, like, you know, your world socially in a I mean, what... Essentially, you could take it in any direction, but essentially it's a constructive way. And that's good. It connects a lot of different people. It's also good for people who are in various crisis situations, or like let's say, I don't know, like years ago when I was really ill, you know, like I had, you know, a lot of things going on with my health, and it was actually easier to connect with people who might have had similar issues online as opposed to in person, because no one I knew in person had those issues, you know. But I could go online, and it's inevitable that I'm gonna find at least a few thousand people who's gonna be like me. So, you know, and so just like there's two sides to every coin, you know. There's two sides to how you can approach everything. It's true. I mean, we should also discuss that. I mean,
that's interesting.
Yeah, you can put everything in you could do everything negatively or positively.
So it sounds like the internet has really played a part in your life in ways that kind of, I guess, I don't know, liberated, even saved you, even.
Liberated and even saved me at different points in my life, and at other times completely socially alienated me because...
Socially alienated you.
Because, how did we put it? I was too mature to... Whatever I said before. I was too mature to be social. I don't know. It was better put the first time I said it, and I wish I could quote that right now, because that really said everything in a nutshell right there. I was too mature to be social or something like that. I don't know. Whatever I said before, that's what it is. It's been like... It's really been a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde
right, sure.
relationship for me, yeah. And it's true. There's no exaggeration in what you said. I mean, at times I've connected with people on there that, yeah, in pretty dire situations that, yeah, in a way, sure, yeah, really bailed me out of some dark holes and some situations that were not relatable to the people around me. Then I depended on those relationships and those conversations and those interactions, Oh, definitely. Now, some of those people I ended up, extending that relationship and meeting in person. Some I never did, but still, their words were not minced. Some of the words that they said online happened to be really, actually, I still remember some of the conversations we had, and some of those were 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
Some of them were so valuable to me that with their permission, I printed them out and just kept them because because occasionally I reread them just for their insights. So, just like anything else,
powerful stuff.
Yeah, it depends what you want to use it for. It's the world is light and dark, and so is the internet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What about Reddit? That's just another thing that was on my mind. You ever been on there at all?
A few times, casually, lightly. That's sporadically. I've used Reddit for a few things, but I wouldn't. You probably have more experience on there than I do.
Well, I've been getting to know it more. Like so it's weird with me. At the time, I tried going on Reddit a little bit in the past, but at the time it never stuck with me for some reason. It never could. So funny enough, more recently, and I don't know. I guess I kind of feel in a funny way that ever since I've dropped Tumblr altogether and put that behind me, I've become more open to Reddit and try to explore it and understand it more. And so I'm still getting to know it. I don't see what the cons or the flaws are as too much right now because I'm still getting to know it. But I'm happy to say I'm liking it more. I'm inviting it more into my online life now than I ever used to. So I'm kind of mixing it. For me, I'm kind of mixing it up between YouTube and Reddit, among any other sites and social networks I'll go to. I guess almost sort of like I kind of have used Instagram as kind of like my replacement of Facebook, even though I still have my Facebook, but I feel like Facebook has just kind of become like the main page that anyone will go to now. So it's like you can't really, unless you decide to deactivate your page, there's no real actually getting completely rid of Facebook unless you actually deactivate your page voluntarily.
Yeah, which I have in the past. So like I said, this is my second Facebook page, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the future holds for it. It's undeterminable for me. I don't really know. It's indeterminate.
But yeah, for me, I hold in a more pleasant regard and in a more pleasant resonance Instagram more than Facebook now. And that's another thing I didn't expect from myself, because when I first heard about Instagram, the way I understood it, it kind of sounded kind of silly and shallow to me, and I didn't see what the point was.
Yeah, me too, actually. Yeah.
It wasn't really until about 2 years ago when I first started actually using it, and then seeing how I was actually getting more pleasantries and more fun with it more than Facebook. It kind of emotionally it ended up replacing what Facebook used to be for me. All that kind of those pleasantries and more fun memories I used to have on Facebook when I would share picture albums and then post statuses and things like that. Instagram has emotionally served as that replacement for me now.
Well, for the record, and I don't know what the future holds, but I mean, I'm open to really anything. But for the record, I've never had an Instagram account. Still don't.
Yeah, you should get one.
Yeah, I've that one I just never really thought much about. Not too much. Well, with the exception of what you said, when I first heard about it, I just thought it was like some flaky, stupid thing.
Yeah.
And
almost like Vine, if you remember that.
I do remember Vine, and I had a friend who was obsessed with Vine, and used to just come over, literally sit on my couch and watch Vine videos all day long, and I used to get angry because I'm like, dude, you're here, can we hang out a little bit? And you'd be on Vine watching these 7-second clips all day long.
Yeah, but what's funny to me? I have this one friend who was a film student like me as well. There's these two guys though he follows on YouTube, and to my listeners out there, you may have actually heard of them if you're YouTube buffs or film buffs. Final Cut King and what's his name, VFX Bro. So they both have like amazing YouTube channels, like insane. At the time, they both also had Vine accounts when Vine was still around, and they actually had some pretty like really cool and creative Vine videos. So that's how I got acquainted to Vine.
Oh, is Vine actually completely gone now? I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, it shut down. So I think what they did was they archived the site. I think just for people who actually used it, who had an account. I think they were able to archive the site just to keep it as memoirs for people who did use it. But now you can't actually post anything on there. That ship has sailed.
But you could still go back and look in the archives.
I guess you can. I don't really, because I don't know if you already had to be signed onto the website in order to do that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I remember my friend he seemed to live on Vine more than in reality.
More than, because that was such a big thing back then too.
No, I never had. I only used it. How should I put it? I lived only on Vine through other people. I never actually purposely made my own account.
And that was kind of like me through my friend, my friend who like he's a video editor now. Like he loved those two YouTubers, and the funny part is. And this is a story from him, but I'll put it out there for his sake. One of those YouTubers, the VFX Bro, he is now actually very, very good friends with. He even works for him.
Oh wow!
He works for one of his he's friends with and does freelance work for one of his like YouTube idols now. So how insane is that? Like,
yeah, that's really cool.
Someone that you like watched just as a fan. He was a fan of this guy on YouTube, and it was like one of his favorite YouTubers, became friends with him, and now he does work for him.
So that's like an internet success story, as opposed to whatever it's.
Yeah, it kind of is. And he used to show me their Vine videos a lot too, and they were like some of the most incredible videos I'd ever seen in my life. They were only 6 seconds long. You wouldn't think that a 6-second video would be of anything that would matter.
Yeah, right.
But if you actually see these videos, I'm telling you right now, they'll be some of the most like insanely creative and most incredible videos you'll ever see in your life.
Wow. Are they like done in a succession, like in a string, where like they all kind of like go one right after the other, or are they isolated? Like 6 seconds bleeds into the next 6 seconds.
Oh no, it doesn't bleed into the next one. It runs on a loop, so it keeps starting over and over.
Right, okay, yeah.
But yeah, my original point being was when I heard about Instagram, I kind of compared it with Vine at the time. Like I thought it was stupid and kind of just like another trend. But yeah, no, it just goes to show you that sometimes your preconceptions about whatever turns out to be, not as stupid as you might have thought.
Well, people who are online who are really young might not know about MySpace, but before before Facebook, it was MySpace, and it wasn't Facebook that propelled this whole revolution. It was MySpace.
It was MySpace,
and that was the most active I was on any of those sites. When it was new and before it went downhill, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
I actually liked it too. I was on there too for a little. Can you believe it's still around?
I didn't know it was still around. Wow.
Well, they revamped it.
That's kind of like that show. You might not have heard of it, but there's a show called Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those shows that's still around, but I can't find a single soul who watches it.
It's still around?
Exactly. Whether it's in person or even on the internet, I can't find anyone who watches it, but somehow the show keeps running, so...
Wow.
I don't know. Maybe
That's
they have
crazy.
one really powerful fan out there who just pays for it to keep going. Maybe Bill Gates likes it. I don't know. You know what I mean? Somebody rich. Because how else would it keep going? Yeah, it's still going, and yeah, that used to be like one of those shows that was like everybody knew about it. At least one person you knew watched. Now I can't find. Now quite the opposite is true. It's just like one super billionaire somewhere watches it and I guess funds the whole show. I don't know. I don't know who pays those actors because it doesn't get any ratings. But anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's pretty funny. But yeah, MySpace. I remember I used to like going on there, and my favorite thing was setting up used to set up a playlist. So like anybody who went to your MySpace page, like instantly like your playlist would start and it would like play whatever song you had up there. And one of my favorite things to do was like just share the music, or like it was also a cool way for a music fan just to be able to find out about new music that's just on there. I found some really cool stuff on there, and I don't know. It was just more like. It was an outlet. Like, it was like the way you say that, you know, you're having fun memories on Instagram, and it used to be that way on Facebook for you. That's how it was on MySpace for me. Like, I used to go on there, and it was just, like, instantly fun. I'd go on there, and it was just like having, like, it was just, like, literally, like, no pun really intended. Like having my own little space in the corner of the internet where like I could do my own little thing and just share things in just like a light, natural way.
Yeah.
There wasn't any like heaviness or weird agenda attached.
No political angle to it. Or being politically correct. And
like I used to even call, and this is like when people actually used to still call their people. I'd call people and I'd be like, hey man, like I'd actually like to talk about my MySpace page. I'd be like, hey yo, I can't wait until you see what I put on my MySpace page. Oh, it's really cool. Check it out. And they go on or whatever.
See, this is back when the internet used to just be more in its infancy, and it was more like a toy, if anything. To us, it was just like a toy.
Especially back in the late '90s, when in the chat room like heyday, you know, you go on there, and it was like an escape from reality, but it was like. But you knew when to shut, like, you knew, I don't know, you could shut it off. I guess that's a difference. You could shut it off and resume your
your normal everyday life.
Which is now considered your other life. But at the time, it was considered resuming your normal life.
Resuming your normal life.
Yeah, like, you know, you turned on your little dial-up modem, and you dialed into this you know, I'm speaking, of course, like figuratively, but you dialed yourself into this far off land, and it was just like, whoa, I'm going into magic. I'm dialing myself into another little galaxy somewhere in the corner of the universe.
Yeah,
I'm doing I'm doing this cool kind of fun, exotic thing.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do that for a couple hours. Okay, I'm tired. I'm gonna sign out now and
go
back to the physical world, and that's it. And now it's just they're completely intertwined.
And now, yeah, that's the thing. It's completely intertwined, and that's like a whole nother topic for a whole nother episode.
Yeah, yeah. When we start talking about, we could get more into all that double life stuff, and it almost has like a sci-fi feel to it. Yeah, and you know,
it just came to my mind. I think it was one of the anime writers. I think his name is Chiaki J. Konaka. So he's made like a number of these like existentialist sci-fi kind of anime, and so he's done like a lot of like heavy research. And this back when the internet was still in its infancy and everything, and I mean he was just doing so much kind of research and studies. Where he seemed to be a big believer that eventually the internet was going to become like intertwined with your actual life, and so some of the anime he was making at the time, one of them in particular, it kind of scarily sort of predicted this. And that one anime that I'm thinking of that I watched, still have a hard time understanding it. I guess I gotta watch it again. Is Serial Experiments Lain.
Not familiar with it.
That anime came out in 1998. It's only 13 episodes long. And from what I understood, that anime was about this girl who was still in middle school, so still like really young, but a Japanese schoolgirl in middle school, and she was just getting acquainted to what the internet was. And they had a different name for it on the show. I think they called it The Wired instead of the internet. So I think they called it The Wired, and in that,
that sounds vaguely familiar now. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that internet type place that she would go to, she actually made her own avatar, and that's what people were doing. They were making their own digital avatars. So what ended up happening that was so weird in the show, weird and yet fascinating, was that her avatar literally took a life of its own. And so her digital avatar literally became separate from her. And I think the twist was that this whole time it was actually that she herself was never actually a real physical person to begin with.
Oh, okay.
She was an experiment. And this is a spoiler. I'm sorry I'm saying it this late on, but spoiler alert. She this whole time she was an experiment from an organization or some secret organization, something like that, or she actually was an avatar that was I get somehow created out of the Wired, something like that, and then manifested itself into the real world.
Gotcha. Yeah, that concept I didn't know about that, like what you're saying, but that concept kind of like reminds me of like an outline that I started writing a couple years. I mean, it's not exactly like it, but there's some similar elements in there, and I honestly didn't really know about that. But there's so many things out there, you can't know about everything. But as far as like media goes, but some things that I was actually constructing, some broad ideas in this outline I was making of the story that has been on pause for literally like 2 years. But going into that inside out idea, starting out and having its life source starting online and then actually going out into the physical world. Although in my outline I go into like all these deeply complex spiritual concepts and it gets really fascinating for me and complex. So I'm really into all that stuff. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, that's an interesting, very, very interesting idea that I've always been interested in, those kind of sci-fi type concepts. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating, yeah.
And that's something we should probably talk about in a future episode as well.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely get into that. And that kind of inspired me to go dig up that outline and develop it a little more and see where I could go with that.
Oh.
And I could share that on here a little bit more. Yeah, definitely. Although I wouldn't share it all.
Glad to hear that it re-sparks some interest of yours, some inspiration of yours.
Yep.
But okay, yeah. So I think I'm pretty much tapped out, and
yeah. Only we'll just go like another couple hours. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I guess we're good for now.
Yeah,
we're good for now. We'll reconnect with you if you're still there next time. If you still next time.
So I don't know yet for sure if I'm gonna have Bane join me in Hawkflame in future episodes, or if it's just gonna be me bouncing between these two. Well, I guess we'll just see.
Have to see. Yeah,
we'll have to see how. Yeah.
I'm making more of an effort to get out of my underworld.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's more inevitable that I'll bounce into different people, different communities. I guess I don't know.